Imagine this. You're standing in a crowded room when they walk in. Instantly, your body tenses. Your jaw locks. A wave of heat rises up your neck. You don't just dislike this person, you loathe them. The way they speak, the way they move, the way they seem to command attention without effort. Every interaction feels like sandpaper on an open wound. Now imagine digging deeper, peeling back the layers of that hatred, only to find something impossible. The person you hate most is a mirror. Not a flattering one, not a kind one, but a mirror nonetheless. A distorted reflection of everything you've buried, everything you refuse to see in yourself. This isn't just anger, this is recognition. And Carl Jung's warning echoes through the decades. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The paradox of hatred. Here's the unsettling truth. Hatred is never just about the other person. The boss who micromanages you, the ex who betrayed you, the friend who always plays the victim. They're not just characters in your story, they're messengers. Your reaction to them is a coded signal from your subconscious, pointing to a part of yourself you've disowned. The more intense the emotion, the louder the signal. Think of it like this. If you despise arrogance, what part of you fears being seen as too much, or worse, not enough? If you resent victims, where have you refused to acknowledge your own helplessness? If you rage at betrayal, what trust have you broken with yourself first? This is the shadow at work. Jung's infamous shadow self, the repository of everything we deny, suppress, or deem unacceptable. It's not evil, it's just exiled. And like all exiled things, it claws its way back into your life through projection. You don't see people as they are, you see them as you are. The emotional alchemy of loathing. Let's pause here, because this idea doesn't just unsettle, it threatens. If hatred reveals hidden truths, then your enemies become teachers, your rage becomes a roadmap, your deepest shames become portals to power. But the mind rebels. No, it insists. That person is toxic, they're the problem. And that's the trap. The moment you label someone as the problem, you hand them the keys to your psyche. Every time you react, they win. Every time you obsess, they control you. Because hatred is attachment in reverse. Think of the last time someone lived rent-free in your head. Were you free, or were you haunted? This is the great psychological irony. The people who trigger you most are the ones you're most bound to. Not by love, but by something far more potent. Unfinished business with yourself. The question that unlocks everything. So here's the challenge, the one Jung dared us to confront. What if the person you hate most is the key to your liberation? Not because they'll change, not because you'll forgive and forget, but because they're showing you what you still need to face. The traits you can't stand in others are the traits you've been forbidden to acknowledge in yourself. The wounds you rage against are the wounds you still carry. This isn't about blame, it's about ownership. And ownership is the only path to power. Lead into next section. But here's where it gets dangerous, because if hatred is a mirror, then why does the reflection feel like a threat? What is it about these hidden parts of ourselves that terrifies us so deeply? To answer that, we must descend into the darkest chamber of the psyche, where the shadow doesn't just hide, it rules. The shadow war inside you. There's a civil war raging in your subconscious. On one side, the version of yourself you show the world, the curated identity, the acceptable emotions, the traits you've been praised for. On the other, everything you've been taught to reject. Your raw impulses, your shameful desires, the parts of you that were scolded, mocked, or abandoned into silence. This is the birth of the shadow, not as a flaw, but as a survival mechanism. Jung called it the thing a person has no wish to be. When a child learns that anger makes them unlovable, anger goes into the shadow. When passion is punished, passion goes into the shadow. Even power gets buried there, because power is dangerous. Power risks rejection. So we disown these fragments, but they don't disappear. They go underground. And like any exiled force, they find ways to return. The projection paradox. Here's where the mind plays its cruelest trick. You can't recognize your shadow in yourself, so you see it in others instead. This is projection, the psychological equivalent of a movie projector casting your inner film onto the external world. The people who trigger you are simply the screens. That coworker who loves attention, maybe you've shamed your own need to be seen. The partner who never commits, perhaps you fear your own capacity to abandon. The politician you can't stand, they might embody the control you secretly crave. Nietzsche saw this clearly. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster. And when you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. Your hatred is the abyss gazing back. Why the shadow wins, even when you lose. Society conspires to keep the shadow hidden. Religion calls it sin. Capitalism calls it unmarketable. Social media calls it a bad brand. We're taught to filter our thoughts, neutralize our edges, trade authenticity for approval. But the shadow doesn't evaporate, it mutates. The nice guy who explodes in rage, the spiritual person addicted to gossip, the perfect parent with a secret vice. These aren't hypocrisies, they're pressure valves for the disowned self. Viktor Frankl observed this in Nazi concentration camps. The sort of person the prisoner became was the result of an inner decision. It's not the environment that shapes us, but what we do with the environment. Your shadow is that inner decision, the parts of yourself you've sentenced to darkness, the high cost of hating your reflection. When you refuse to face your shadow, you give it power. The more you deny a trait, the more it controls you unconsciously, e.g. the anti-materialist obsessed with others' wealth. You attract mirrors. Like a magnet, you'll keep encountering people who embody what you suppress. You split yourself. A war between who you are and who you pretend to be drains your vitality. Jean-Paul Sartre put it brutally. If you hate your enemies, you'll soon hate your friends. Then you'll hate yourself. And then you'll love your hatred. This is why hatred feels so addictive. It's a perverse form of self-contact. Every time you recoil from that person, the narcissist, the manipulator, the arrogant fool, you aren't just rejecting them. You're rejecting a fragment of yourself. And the universe responds with eerie precision. The more you deny it, the more it appears. This isn't karma, it's neuroscience. Your brain is wired to detect what you resist. Like a psychological immune system gone rogue, it scans the world for threats. But the threats it finds are the ones you've programmed it to see. The more you hate neediness, the needier people flock to you. The more you judge laziness, the more life forces you to pick up others' slack. The more you fear betrayal, the more you attract situations that feel like betrayal. This is selective perception at work, your mind filtering reality to confirm what you already believe. But here's the twist. You don't see what's there. You see what you are. And the person you hate, they're just the actor playing the role your psyche assigned them. The vicious cycle of projection. Imagine a man who despises his father's weakness. He spends his life building a fortress of control, only to marry a woman who needs him desperately. He's trapped. Why? Because what we refuse to accept in ourselves, we either become or attract. This is the shadow's revenge. Denial, I'm nothing like my father. Projection, my wife is so weak. Repetition, he now plays the strong one, but secretly resents it, just as his father resented his own powerlessness. The cycle continues until he faces the truth. His hatred of weakness was fear of his own. This is why Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The neurological prison of hatred. Science confirms what mystics knew. Hatred physically alters your brain. Amygdala hijack. Your threat detection system fires wildly at triggers, flooding you with cortisol, the stress hormone. Confirmation bias. Your brain cherry-picks evidence to justify your emotions, reinforcing the loop. Neural pathways. The more you indulge hatred, the deeper the mental rut, until reacting becomes automatic. In other words, the more you hate, the easier it gets, and the harder it becomes to stop. This is why reconciliation feels impossible with certain people. It's not about them. It's about the neural empire you've built to justify your stance. The cultural conspiracy of division society profits from your hatred. Social media algorithms feed you content that enrages you, because rage equals engagement. Political systems rely on us versus them narratives to mobilize voters. Consumer culture sells you solutions to problems it convinced you to hate. You're caught in what Aldous Huxley called the endless cycle of desire and aversion. And the person you hate, they're just a pawn in the game, the turning point. But there's a way out. Not through forgiveness, not through tolerance, but through reclamation. The moment you realize the person you hate is a ghost, a specter of your own disowned self, and ghosts can't haunt you once you stop believing in them. There comes a moment, if you're brave enough to allow it, when hatred stops feeling like fire and starts feeling like a funeral. You realize you're not fighting them anymore. You're mourning yourself. This is the turning point. The instant your rage reveals its true face, not as a weapon, but as a wound. And wounds demand something far more radical than revenge: integration. Not acceptance, not forgiveness. Integration, the defiant act of reclaiming every exiled fragment of who you are. The 3 laws of shadow work. 1. The mirror principle. Next time someone triggers you, ask, what if this is me? Where have I done this, even subtly? When have I felt this same energy in myself? Example: hate a liar? Recall the harmless lies you've told to avoid conflict. Despise arrogance? Remember the times you masked insecurity with superiority. This isn't about guilt, it's about pattern recognition. 2. The ownership paradox. Say aloud, I am capable of everything I hate. Feel the resistance? That's your shadow fighting back. The more visceral the disgust, the closer you are to gold. 3. The alchemy of anger. When hatred strikes, located in your body, chest, jaw, stomach, ask it, what are you protecting me from? Listen, not with your mind, but with your bones. The answer will surprise you. The shadow's gift. Every disowned trait holds a superpower. What you hate, what it reveals, the hidden strength, neediness, your own unmet needs, capacity for deep connection, arrogance, your stifled confidence, natural leadership, manipulation, your strategic mind, problem-solving genius. The very qualities you've been taught to reject are the ones that could set you free. The daily practice, shadow journaling. Each night, write, today I saw my shadow in, no censorship, no judgment. Trigger alchemy. When irritated, whisper, this is me. Watch the charge dissolve. Sacred rage ritual. Scream into a pillow, tear paper, dance violently, move the energy through. Here's the secret no one tells you about shadows. They don't exist. Not as monsters, not as flaws, not as enemies. The shadow is simply light, interrupted. Every trait you've buried, every emotion you've denied, every so-called weakness you've disowned was never the problem. The problem was the story you believed about it. Your rage wasn't dangerous, it was power without direction. Your neediness wasn't pathetic, it was love without boundaries. Your laziness wasn't failure, it was wisdom refusing to participate in madness. This is the ultimate rebellion, realizing your darkness was light all along, just waiting for permission to shine. The alchemy of wholeness, Jung's final revelation. I'd rather be whole than good. Whole means the saint and the sinner, the hero and the coward, the genius and the fool. Not balanced, not controlled, integrated. When you stop fighting yourself, your enemies lose power because they're no longer mirrors. Your triggers lose charge because they're no longer threats. Your life gains coherence because you're no longer at war. This isn't spirituality, this is physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Suppress one side and it will erupt elsewhere. The final mirror. Now, one last question. Who would you be if you stopped believing you were broken? If you embraced your flaws as features, honored your weaknesses as wisdom, let your contradictions coexist, you'd discover the most shocking truth of all. The person you hated most was never out there. They were just a placeholder, a stand-in for the love you withheld from yourself, the invitation. So here's your choice. Continue the war, projecting, resisting, hating in cycles that never end, or step into the light of your own wholeness. Not to become perfect, but to become real. The shadows will still come, the triggers will still surface, but now you'll know their secret. They're not here to hurt you. They're here to bring you home.